Hello, everyone. I am here today to talk about the debut album by former TikTok sensation turned hit pop girl Addison Rae's debut record, Addison. I'm as shocked as probably anyone who follows my channel could possibly imagine that an Addison Rae record is an album I feel like I have to review on this channel. I did not follow Addison in the TikTok times, in the TikTok era. I had heard her name, on the internet. If you're on it as much as I've been, it's impossible to not hear that name, along with people like Charlie D'Amelio and all these other names. I just kind of researched and I was like, yeah, not for me. Okay, get their coin, whatever. I sort of put them in the same lane as that Hawk Tuah girl, last summer. Remember, that was a huge thing. And people just cashing in on, 15 seconds of fame based on TikTok and, virality from that. And so when Addison decided that she wanted to make music, I was very skeptical, like I think most were. And when she released her debut EP in 2023, I sort of shrugged it off as okay, there's a dime a dozen pop girls who are making music like this. There's nothing that special here. I might enjoy a few songs. It's good junk food pop music, but I don't see anything that special to, remember this name, and bookmark and be excited for a debut album for in the ways that Addison turned into being. If you watched the video that I ended up making at the end of last year, where I talked about my most anticipated album releases, my most hoped for predictions for albums in 2025, Addison Rae was up there, and I was super shocked. And I talked about it in that video how that was the case, but everything changed when Aquamarine was released. But we have got to first rewind a few months earlier to Diet Pepsi. I'll be honest, Diet Pepsi kind of came and went without me really paying much attention. Again, I was I'm aware that she's put out a new song, but I'm not going to go out of my way to listen to it because to me it was just sort of I don't know, is this really going to be anything that special? It's Sabrina Carpenter was everywhere last year, and her style of pop music has sort of become, along with Chappell Roan, this sort of ubiquitous thing that I'm getting a little tired of. And I assumed that Diet Pepsi was going to be in that lane. So I just didn't bother to listen to it because I was there's no way this is going to be the kind of airy, eclectic synth dance pop music that I really like. But then I listened to it after Aquamarine came out and I was wait a minute, I should have been listening to this from the get-go. So when Aquamarine did come out, I saw the clips, I saw the videos on Twitter, back when I was still on Twitter, and I saw all of the, clips and I was instantly mesmerized. I was wait a minute, we've got to seriously pay attention now. The spell had found me. I had become infatuated. Addison's debut 2 singles, has there ever been a pop debut that solid in recent history? In my opinion, between Diet Pepsi and Aquamarine, I don't know. Those 2 songs are just heavy hitters for me. And it's unfortunate that Aquamarine didn't have quite the same level of chart success. Diet Pepsi did okay. But, those 2 songs, regardless, they still went viral. They still did their thing for what they needed to do to promote Addison, and not just promote her, but to sort of tell the world that, as her self-titled album implies, we are now just Addison. We are not Addison Rae. Addison Rae Easterling is actually her full name, but I guess she thought Addison Easterling sounded probably a little bit too like some Nashville country starlet, and thought Addison Rae makes me sound a little bit more edgy. And now, of course, she wants to drop the Rae and just be Addison. But this single rollout, I think, has been quite legendary. And I do feel that it echoes the sort of anticipatory buildup that I really miss for a lot of album releases that we get these days. I do still feel like a lot of artists do put out a lot of singles before their albums are released, but a lot of times they don't treat them with the same level of care and promotion. And especially in the music video department. But Addison made sure that all of these singles got music videos, that a lot of them got remixes. There's even a remix music video for Aquamarine with Arca, which I'll be honest, I think the Arca Marine remix is not as good as the original because it just takes the song into a completely different lane for me, and I like the more airy, effervescent nature of the original. But I love Arca, and of course, I am, always going to support, I just loved that collaboration happening, because it was someone who's so avant-garde matching with someone who I would think is the absolute opposite of that based on the TikTok days and creating something so artful that I just find really heartwarming. And I think that's like the major positive that I can say for the headline of this video is that it's really refreshing to see someone like Addison Rae have such what I consider to be an artistic flair. I know that there are going to be people who disagree with me on that. I've seen reviews from, people saying that Addison is just borrowing and rehashing leftovers from the 2000s and from the 90s, that she's not really, making her own stamp. I would disagree. I mean, yes, there's definitely room for improvement. I think that this album is just a good introduction into what Addison is capable of. I will lament it's a little short. It's only 33 minutes. We've got 12 tracks, but only 2 of those tracks are not actual songs. They are just interludes, which I lament. I talk about in my Miley Cyrus review. At least Miley called those songs Interlude 1 and 2. I was really upset when the songs that I was looking forward to being like full things ended up just being under a minute. And even in that, they weren't really that interesting. I'll get to that when I go through track by track. But it is a slight record, and I was very disappointed. I didn't look at the track times before I listened, and that did kind of slap me over the face. I was like, wait a minute, all the songs really we've heard already. This record has already been basically released. So we had, like I said, Diet Pepsi came, we had Aquamarine, then we had High Fashion. High Fashion, was the first one that I was a little like, okay, like I like this. I'm not as head over heels for it. But once again, I love how experimental this is. This sounds like something that, not your average pop girl would try and make. I don't think Sabrina Carpenter is going to make a song that sounds like this. And that's kind of exciting to me. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm shading Sabrina Carpenter. I just can't get into her music. It's just the same guitar plucked pop stuff that we're seeing all these girls do. It's like a country tinge, and I'm getting kind of tired of it. But I will say I'm more of a, EDM synth pop head. And so I think that's why Addison is just a little more exciting, even when there are some guitars brought in, when it's a little acoustic at a few moments. There's very little of that on this record, though. Then we had Headphones On, a slow burn that at first I was like, this is nice, to like completely taking over my playlists. Headphones On just creeped up on me in a way I did not anticipate. And then we even got Fame as a Gun just a week before. I almost wish she hadn't released that song earlier, because I do feel like it took away from the actual album release itself, because then we only had a couple actual full-length songs to have for the first actual listen through. But at the same time, I'm glad she gave it a music video. I'm glad she's spotlighting these songs. We also got a music video for Times Like These on the album release day. And I wouldn't be surprised if In the Rain ends up getting the final single treatment, which will basically cover all the substantial songs on this record. Yes, there are other songs on here, but they are not the songs worthy of getting the single treatment. And I will discuss. Before we get into the track list, I do just want to say I was also very interested to see how she was going to do an album cover. I felt like the visual style in her music videos, it was very Lana Del Rey, but it was also very 90s Madonna. It had a Britney Spears, of course, choreography, lens to it. There was something about the visuals for those two, especially Aquamarine and Diet Pepsi, that I just found so captivating and intriguing. What would be otherwise, especially in Diet Pepsi, rather, typical kind of promiscuous backseat body rolls in the sort of ambiance of the song. The way that it was constructed, it just had this really artistic edge that I really appreciated. It felt like there was a strong female gaze over everything in the visuals. Like these were all directed by women. I'm not 100% sure if the music videos were all directed by women, but I could just sense that feminine energy, and it was so present. And also something I just have to say that I find really wonderful is the fact that there are basically no male collaborators on this project whatsoever. I was actually initially thinking that Luca Kloser, who is one of the Swedish producers that she worked with on this record, was a man, because I always thought of Luca as a man's name. But no, apparently Luca is a woman, as well as someone named Elvira and then Tova Berman. And the artwork was shot by Mia Karen. Now, apparently the mixing engineer was a man. There's always got to be a man involved somewhere, but the mixing is different. That's not a creative choice. And these Swedish women also, these Swedish producers also provide backing vocals. And so it was really wonderful to see that. And I heard someone say it definitely sounded like an album made by women. And I don't know, as a pop album, I hear that. That's not to say that, there's nothing, there's amazing male producers, especially from the Nordics, as we've talked about. But, and that's the thing, Sabrina, can you just get away from Jack Antonoff? I think that's something. Anyway, I'm digressing. Oh, goodness. Let's not get Addison to work with Jack. Please, please, no. I don't know. I could see it happening. But, I think that she could make something interesting. I was interested to see the album cover. I do feel like we're getting a very, Madonna Ray of Light homage here. I will say the bright yellow and orange, it's a little bit of a strange, color choice. It definitely evokes summer. And of course, yellow and this sort of neon expressive, vibrant pink and orange. It's like a positive color. It's flame, it's summer, it's sunlight. But at the same time, it's not a color combination that I think works very well with her skin on this cover. And it kind of makes, I don't know, it's just, as the graphic designer, I'm sort of looking at this cover and thinking there's a lot more potential that could have been mined here. I obviously understand why she didn't want to go with a blue background, because then it would be too much clearly ripping off of Madonna's Ray of Light. She needed to change the colors. And having listened to the album, I do feel like a lot of those colors do come through. Although I get a lot more blues and purples than I do yellows and oranges when listening to this record. But I still see the color palette. It's a very summery record, and I hear that and see that. And so I think there's, caught mid of dance, there's looking over the shoulder. It's got this very, seductive and alluring kind of confession on a blissed out dance floor energy, which is definitely something that she is channeling from Madonna. But it's an interesting album art. It's an interesting album cover. I was perhaps expecting something a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more popping, and not quite so what you get with a lot of female album covers, unfortunately, which is just, a kind of generic pose with a somewhat, generic background. But at the same time, there's definitely worse routes she could have gone. So it fits with the homage. And I think that, if she really wanted to be tongue-in-cheek, she could have called this album RAE of Light. But that would have been a little too on the nose. We don't want to get too heavy-handed with the Madonna, the Madonna-isms, because, obviously people are already critiquing her for perhaps being not the most original, which again, I don't agree with. We open with New York. I can definitely hear the Charlie XCX on this track. Charlie has sort of taken Addison under her wing when Addison actually, I think, wowed a lot of people was when the Von Dutch remix came out last summer. I, again, did not really care for that remix. I actually prefer the original version of Von Dutch. But I appreciate that, again, the experimental EDM flair is something that I am glad that Addison is exploring. And I think that Charlie has been a huge influence there. It's interesting because I don't really think that Charlie's music actually sounds very much at all like what the kind of stuff in production that we mostly see on this record. But New York, if there had to be one song that I could sort of hear being on Brat or some of Charlie's other records, it is New York. It's a slight song. It's a bit basic. We've got a dime a dozen songs about girls talking about going to New York for the first time and getting stars in their eyes and going to the Bowery and chewing gum on the kick drum. I love she's got this just like effervescent, like carefree party girl energy that doesn't come across forced. And I think that's just because she just comes across as this carefree spirit. And so even if it's a little cringe sometimes, I just am like, this is that sort of Sex in the City pop that, we see, we like. I mean, we support, right? I mean, it's vapid, but it's also like what we signed up for when we're making this kind of bubblegum music. That being said, I do think New York is perhaps a little too one note for me in terms of the production, perhaps in terms of the vocal delivery. It's not like really wowing me. There's no real bombast to it. So, as an album opener, I can see why she chose it. But it's definitely not a highlight for me on the project. Diet Pepsi is the perfect, true big single to like lead the project. And the ravishing vocal layering and warm kind of fuzzy feeling that this song has, that's just so sexy but also light and airy, and it doesn't feel like it's actually as crude as it really is if you listen to the lyrical content. I mean, I love when you can play a pop song that's kind of crude with its lyrics, but like it's masked in something that seems so transcendental that you almost forget that it's like about like what it's about. And for me, Diet Pepsi could have definitely been, it's an explicit song, but it's so steamy and seductive that I don't know. I haven't heard a song that is so brilliantly captures the sonic energy of like really intense, passionate, aphrodisiac lovemaking, particularly young lovemaking, and just like beautiful bodies in a car getting steamy. Beautiful bodies in a car getting steamy. This song is the feminine version of that. There's a masculine version of that somewhere, probably made by other artists. Be interested to hear that. This is the feminine version, and it is just absolutely god tier for me. But then we have Money is Everything. This is, I'll be honest with you, the beginning of this album was a little rough for me on the first listen because, I've already listened to these songs a million times, but the new songs I was the most excited for. And New York, kind of medium. Money is Everything. I was like, oh, shoot. Not only is this song under 3 minutes, which is a problem for me because there's not that many songs on this record, but this is actually bad. Money is Everything is, I think, the kind of music we all feared Addison Rae was going to make when she was doing Tik-Tok. I appreciate the camp element, and now that I've heard the whole record, it's got a place there. This is definitely a song that's not meant to be taken very seriously. It is very tongue-in-cheek. But, even if you take out the, production, which I think is, questionable, I don't find the sort of trap beats to be that original or interesting sonically. I do feel like there's some questionable like ethics espoused in this one. But at the same time, when I saw that we had a song called Money is Everything on the track list, I was actually living for it. It was a song I was really excited to listen to for that reason, because I have not a really controversial opinion, but I do believe money can buy happiness. It just depends on the type of person that you are. And so I would like to believe that, for certain people, that the truth is that money is true freedom. And so in a lot of ways, we live in a society where money truly is everything. And I can't fault someone for feeling that way in this economy. It's what we, celebrate. This album definitely, has elements that I could say is late stage capitalism pop, where you see a lot of artists, reckoning with their wealth and then also the ethics of that. And I think that it's an interesting conversation. Addison is so young and she has so much money. But as she says, she's not bringing any of it to heaven. So why not live it up? Money loves me. I'm the richest girl in the world. There's this whole positive energy attracts. If you have an attractive personality, good things come. I push back against that a little bit because I think it negates so many other systemic factors that come into play in terms of how capitalism works that are largely out of your control. So I don't get too caught up in that kind of wishful thinking, but it's good to be an idealist. And this song has that carefree joie de vivre, but also a little bit of that, rich girl tongue in cheek. I can see her on a yacht with sunglasses, just sort of saying, I mean, are you going to blame me for like spending my money? Are you really? Are you just jealous? Are you just jealous? But we could make a song sound better than this. This is definitely phoning it in on in almost all aspects. This is definitely a song that is not really even a song to me. But then we have Aquamarine, one of my favorite songs of 2024. I think it was in my top 4 of the year on my best of 2024 video. Diet Pepsi was in the top 50, but Aquamarine was like, it's a god tier song. I am absolutely in love with the trance-like production, the vocal layering, the way it suits dance moves so rhythmically and so effortlessly, and the way she choreographs it. It's so iridescent, like a pearl inside of an oyster. And it definitely gives off mermaid vibes, mermaid fantasy, and I'm just always going to be living for it. And aquamarine is one of my favorite colors. Lost and Found was a disappointment because of the fact that it's not a song. I don't really have much to say. There's just, these are placeholders for the next song as we kind of seek into a story. I wish she had done a little bit more with these interludes. The way she kind of repeats drugs, drugs, drugs. I was like, oh boy. I mean, it's an interesting sieg into high fashion because obviously high fashion touches on drug use. But I do think that it just doesn't sonically rise to the occasion like those big singles do. I think High Fashion is a really intriguing, multi-layered pop song that has this underbelly to it. It's got all these interesting, rich textures, and I think that it's truly something worth dissecting on a production standpoint. Because every time I listen to it, I just like I'm entranced by the synth work. It almost reminds me a little bit of the vocals of I Am I, Who Am I, a little bit towards the end when she sings "I Don't Need You, No" in the post chorus. It's got this like kind of like in the throat yowling sound that reminds me of Yona Lee. And a little bit of the music that she made on her first 2 albums. I could see this song almost fitting on Kin because of the heavy bass synth and then this sort of, wailing, like kind of soft vocal that's a little ethereal. And there's always this whisper singing kind of style to Addison. She definitely is a little ASMR. I mean, she's definitely not, chest voicing much. It's all head. Sometimes I think some people have critiqued her for this. I think, her singing can get a little drowned out. Her singing voice is acquired. It's not like classically brilliant by any means. But I mean, that's the same reason we love a lot of these pop divas. They tuned right on in the studio can sound really good. I think live Addison sounds fine, but I definitely think that it's sort of like Selena Gomez in that regard. Even though I actually think maybe Addison might be a little stronger vocally than Selena. It's like I appreciate them in the studio cut, but live it's a little rough. I don't want cheap love. I'd rather get high fashion. Talking about these two things that obviously has experimented with drugs. It's very clear on a lot of tracks here, but her true love is fashion. And so conflating the two and trying to sort of understand how the two might be related, how often people who are into the world of fashion have this unhealthy relationship to drugs. It's a seedy world and you have to navigate it so young. And so it can be a very difficult difficult rope to walk on tiptoe. Summer Forever, I think perhaps sonically is the most, I think, evocative of the colors that I am seeing on this album cover. I'm getting very humid, hot summer days here. There's just this ambiance to the track that speaks to that. But I will say this is one of the songs that I feel in the composition falls a little short for the melody, for the overall hook. There are like things I'd like to just tweak in the notes, in the way it's constructed that I think could improve upon making it just a song that just fits like a glove a little better. There's just something missing for me here, even though I see the potential. A song about, again, carefree young love in the middle of summer, staying up all night long, doing everything that, in the honeymoon phase you would with someone. how it feels like a dream being wrapped up in someone's arms. Again, I feel like this song doesn't do enough of what other songs like Diet Pepsi do better, of just sort of viscerally expanding upon that feeling of that kind of heart racing euphoria that comes from that love. And I don't think this song rises to that oral occasion the same way that Diet Pepsi does. In the Rain, I give my hats to the producers. I think, again, this is a phenomenally produced song. I am absolutely in love with the hook. Walk in the room, my high heels on, I strike a pose. Young, dumb, and cute, nothing to lose. And now the past is someone that I have to answer for. Oh, those TikToks, she's probably a little embarrassed by how hard she went with those. I got a whole new point of view. Misunderstood, but I'm not going to sweat it. Isn't it all for the show? Keeping a smile on my face for protection, turning my tears into gold. We really get some introspection on the latter half of this record, which is very appreciated. And the songs also hit, which just makes it a killer combination. I really like when, she really allows herself to open up and be a little bit more vulnerable about dealing with fame, the pressures of what people expect of her, dealing with being this TikTok star that no one actually really took seriously, and now having to rebrand herself and kind of capitalize on like how she used to be, which she probably thinks is pretty cringe. Most of us do. And now being taken seriously as a serious artist, there's a lot to contend with, but you have to put on this brave face because people on the internet are going to be yapping and saying there and writing their think pieces. And, she is not going to let you see her slip up. She's going to keep that stiff upper lip. And cry only in the rain when being disguised because you have cover. No one can tell you're crying in the rain. I love the keyboard element that's introduced to match the melody line as the song progresses. This is just an absolutely, again, very transcendent track that I believe is also taking inspiration from an a-ha's track called Crying in the Rain from 1990. She also mentions Ace of Base as an inspiration on a lot of these songs, and I totally hear it. Talk about like dreamy, blissed out Scandi pop. It don't get better than Ace of Base. Fame as a Gun, I've seen some people say that it doesn't go far enough into actually tackling the issue. But at the same time, enough is already said, I think, in what she says to sort of get its point across. Fame is a gun and I point it blind. Crash and burn, baby, swallow it dry. You got a front row seat and I got a taste of the glamorous life. Reflecting on, again, what it's like to be a new it girl and the rise and fall, and also the kind of transactional relationship that you can form with fans, but also when especially it's built upon success off of virality on an app like TikTok, where you're sort of a commodity that's being advertised. And she tried for so long. I think she was in movies. I went down a deep dive into Addison Rae's like lore because I didn't know that much about her. I didn't realize this girl has been trying. She had a makeup line, clothing line. She was in a movie on Netflix that apparently was horrible. She has tried to capitalize on that TikTok virality from the COVID era in so many ways, and it constantly failed, or it just was met with derision and ridicule. And she made money, but it was at what cost to her reputation. And so fame is definitely something that can be good or bad. It's a double-edged sword, and she seemed to be just pointing it all over the place to try and make a name for herself any way she could. And I think, again, this song shows that sort of messy journey that it takes you on. And again, very well produced, very slick in its rhythm. Absolutely love the production here. Times Like These is probably the most Ray of Light sounding track on this record. I definitely hear elements of Drowned World, Substitute for Love, with that blissed out kind of shimmering guitar over pulsating synths. My life moves faster than me, can't feel the ground beneath my feet. No matter what I try to do, in times like these, it's how it has to be. Another more introspective track. I think it touches on a lot of turmoil that comes with reflecting in your mid 20s about your childhood, who you've turned into, um, where your life is going. Obviously, she's hearing her song on the radio, head out the window, let's see how far I can go. Things are happening at a whirlwind pace for her, and they have been ever since she graduated high school. And she's just trying to catch her feet. And I think that this song perfectly captures the tumultuous, fast paced world that is around her and around anyone going through their 20s. And yet you see everything in slow mo, and you're just like, trying to just sort of soak it all in because it's a lot. And this song imbues that. And it really suits her very soft, sugary delivery on the vocal with the production like this. Her vocals I just think, lightly like sail away on those synths beautifully. Life's no fun through clear waters. I could see this is probably something she's had cross stitched somewhere on a pillow in her room. It seems to be a mantra of hers that she really espouses. I wish this song had a little more to offer, even if it was just an interlude. I wish it was a slightly more interesting interlude. But it segues us into Headphones On, which of course references that lyric as well. I love that this song was filmed, the music video was filmed in Iceland with her riding a pony and the pink hair, but it's juxtaposed with her actually just listening to headphones on one of those penny quarter crank kids ponies. It's all about the power of the imagination and where music can take you in that sort of private relationship, that sanctuary that headphones can bring. And I think all of us who grew up, particularly in the sort of, the iTunes era, the iPod era, we can all relate to just being teenagers and like putting in our headphones. By the way, I am not a fan of AirPods, not a big fan of AirPods. I like actual stringed headphones. I don't want to have to worry about charging them. It just gets really annoying. I loved how in sort of the TikToks I saw, people promoting, and even Addison herself, there was a lot of promotion of actual corded headphones, like it's 2007 again, which, remember those ad campaigns? I still listen to my music that way. It's just, and the wire's fine. It doesn't get too caught up in dancing. But I definitely think that this is also giving a lot of Madonna bedtime stories. It's got a little bit of that R&B groove, which is just so crepuscular. It's got like this sexy, seductive energy. A lot of the beats are so sexy and seductive on this record. You can't fix what's already been broken. You just have to surrender to the moment. Again, platitudes you could see on a 15-year-old girl's Tumblr back in 2012. For sure. This whole album reads a little bit like, a teenager's Tumblr from that era. A white girl from Tumblr in that era. But I don't know, there's something about what I guess you could call it like Pinterest pop. There's just this sort of sparkly, unapologetically girly, ethereal, like I said, ray of light referencing, 90s dance referencing, just abandon that I don't see a lot of pop girls today, pop guys, tapping into as much as I'd like. I mean, if this is the kind of music, this is the lane of pop music I would make. Again, I think some of these songs are a little half baked, and I think that they definitely could, like Summer Forever, for example, has the bones, but it just needs a little bit more work. And even New York, I feel like New York needs just a little more punch. But at the end of the day, I think that this record is infectious, audacious, but small. It's a small record in that it's not hitting you over the face with, beats you've never heard before. It's not going to do what Brat did. It's a list out, like, chill record, but it's still high tempo, if that makes sense. And I like that juxtaposition. I think the, sort of more intense, bombastic pop that we get from a lot of artists, I think Kesha was definitely someone who ushered that in for us, and others. I think that has its place, but I think the blissed out version of up-tempo pop dance music is also, again, something that, Madonna was playing a lot with in those days. And Janet did a lot of stuff like this. There's that sultry sort of like soft and feminine sort of, but like undulating and rhythmic kind of play there. And it's very like liquid. It's liquid music. I don't know. I'm just reaching here. Let me know, what are your thoughts here? I would say that I pretty much love all of the singles. I would say out of the singles, my least favorite is High Fashion, but still I like High Fashion more than many others on this track, on this record. I would say my least favorite is Money is Everything, followed by Summer Forever. I think those two songs for me are like borderline skips. I hate to say it. They just don't have quite the staying power I'd like. And then, of course, the interludes leave a lot to be desired. I would hope that, maybe her next record. I do think she's probably going to do a deluxe. She seems to be following in the school of not just Charlie, but like all of these other young pop stars who are like really living for the deluxe treatment. We no longer put out deluxes the same day as the album. We put it out 6 months later. So I would, within the next 12 months, but more likely around 6 months from now, we got a deluxe edition to Addison. But what are your thoughts on this record? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Was this as spellbinding of a record for you as it was for me? I mean, again, I was a little disappointed in a few areas, and I wasn't perhaps going in to expect songwriting that was going to absolutely blow me away in terms of lyrics. But for what it is, I think it's truly delectable, truly something that I can sit and marinate with and enjoy this summer when I really need that sort of escapism from pop music right now. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this review. Give it a like if you did. Subscribe for more reviews like this. And I will see you all in my next one. Peace, love, and light. Bye.